I need to tell you that when you think about building a gas line, it's going to take us about 10 years to build the gas line. And if we break ground in 3 years, folks that we needed to have prepared and ready to work on that training program, we needed to enroll in registered apprenticeship programs last year and the year before that. So in some instances, we could already be late. Fortunately, as I said, we've been focusing on and trying to align our resources to support that effort. And so we started out with resources that traditionally we didn't see as apprenticeship dollars, if you will. And we focused on taking advantage of starting with our national emergency grants. We had an emergency grant in the fisheries industry. Back in the 90s, the fisheries industry in Alaska basically tanked. The price of fish just fell to the ground, and fishers couldn't afford to pay their boat payments or anything else. And we saw those folks needing to look at new transitions. Well, the skills that many of those fishers had generalized fairly easily to various crafts and trades. So we focused those people as our first line of resource towards supporting industries and occupations related to building a gas line. That's almost 10 years ago that we started planning for a workforce to support a gas line. Today, we could certainly use more in many of the different categories of work, but the point is that we've been planning and focusing on that from the beginning. When you think about the registered apprenticeship model and resource alignment, one of the first questions you have to ask yourself is, where are you going to invest your dollars? That was a really difficult question for us because there's about 15,000 different occupations recognized by ONET. Customers with limited information about what the labor market had to offer were saying, well, I want to be a hairdresser because I can take those skills with me wherever I go. And the concept sounds good on the surface, but if the industry and the market doesn't support more hairdressers, why are you investing more money into hairdressers? But in the end, we identified 113 unique occupations that we could see shortages of potential workers for, and of those 113 occupations, over 70% of them are apprenticeable occupations. So it just made natural sense to us to start focusing our resources on creating more opportunity for people to have access to some of those apprenticeable opportunities. So the next step is you've got your resources, you've got your occupations identified. How do you distribute those resources in a way that makes a difference? Fortunately, the Job Center system in Alaska is fairly robust. We have 24, Ken? 27. 23, because we closed one. We have 23 job centers throughout the state. It's a big state. They're everything from comprehensive job centers that you're all familiar with, right down to kind of one-person shops that when the snow's too deep, we have to call and say that shop's going to be closed today. The reality is that in every one of those shops, we identified at least one person who was skilled up and trained up to understand apprenticeship and to be able to offer the capacity to an employer to say, I can help you establish your standards of instruction. I can help you make that connection with the Office of Apprenticeship so that we can get your training program registered. As a result of that, John's work that we've mentioned several times as the Office of Apprenticeship has dramatically increased. Where before John and Cape were sort of a two-man shop doing their thing and out there meeting employer needs as they came along and occasionally getting referrals from the job centers, suddenly it shifted from them getting just one or two referrals to getting dozens of referrals from the job centers. And then finding that while we trained up those 25 people, apprenticeship was a little more complicated than we thought. It isn't really just registering an on-the-job training program and calling it good. There really is this thing called standards, and they're industry-based standards, and those standards are the tool that for us has resulted in being able to say the resources that we're spending line up with the occupations in demand and assure us that if we train somebody as a office manager, which we have an apprenticeship program for that, that they'll be able to go to another company and have those same skills be portable and transferable to that next employer, and that next employer will know the difference. So it isn't the unique skills that this employer and that employer might have, but it's really a standards-based approach. Teaching our job center folks that concept has taken a little bit more work, particularly on Kate's and John's part. One of the things that we used to do a lot was training for training's sake. You maybe have heard it. We would say, oh, we're going to send 25 people off to computer training, or we're going to send 30 people off to this type of training or that type of training. We still do the classroom-based training, but now we're finding that by aligning the classroom-based training with the employer's needs, we're really finding a stronger benefit and a better return on those workforce investment dollars that we have. So why do we support registered apprenticeship? It's fairly obvious. It immediately meets the demand for workers in for our employers. They have told us on more than one occasion, just send us a warm body and I'll train them. It doesn't work that way. It takes more support than that. It provides a great opportunity for our limited training opportunities in rural Alaska. We have communities of 400 people where the only way to get to that community is to fly in on a good weather day. So looking at being able to do a classroom-based training there is sometimes really limited. Thanks to distance delivery models, we can really support those folks. We already have industry that's basically familiar with RA, so thanks to their basic familiarity, they've been willing to jump on the bandwagon, particularly the multi-employer organizations, organized labor. It's going to be fairly easy to sustain in a low-cost manner because while we end up paying for that first apprentice, the employers quickly see the benefit for that and oftentimes don't need that additional resource for that next apprentice. As it's been pointed out, we really think this translates well to our other mega projects that Alaska is looking for. And finally, as it's been pointed out, it articulates fairly easily with our associates program at the university.